Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of One Pot for All. Welcome back to part 2 of my 2023 Oscar series. We're talking about the Academy Awards and about 5 new movies. I really hope you enjoyed the previous episode because when I think back on the movies I've seen at this point, it's been such a great experience again. I haven't been that caught up with the Oscars the previous years, and I've just gotten back into watching various kinds of movies, which I don't always love or enjoy, but it's just so nice to discover new movies. But before we get started with this week's episode and the part 2 that I was just talking about, I just wanted to quickly refer to my 30 before 30 list, if you remember. So 30 things I want to do before I turn 30. And when I look at that list, I've made some progress. It's not that huge yet because it's only been a month since I told you about it. But still, I have checked off some points and also some things I'm currently working on. So as you know, I'm not going to mention that again after this episode, I promise. I've been to America and that was like the first thing on my list that I wanted to do. And while we were there, I went to the beach, and that was number 21 on my list. And then, things I've been working on are, for example, doing more random acts of kindness and being more aware of my body and my mind. And at the moment, I'm extremely aware of how my mind feels. For some reason, I feel very stressed, especially emotionally stressed, and I don't even know why, but I know one day it'll just be very, very clear. So I'm just waiting and trying to figure out what's going on. But yeah, I've really made some progress, and that makes me really, really happy because when I created that list, I was not at all sure if I was going to make it. And I'm still not positive I'm going to go through all 30 things because I don't see this trip to Disneyland happening before I turn 30. But I think most of those things are actually achievable. And again, that just feels amazing. And also thank you to the Oscars because number 2 on my list is watch 30 new movies. And I've seen so many movies, and it's not even the middle of March yet. So this is going to be great because I'll know I'll definitely make that one happen. But now we're going to be talking about our list of 5 movies for this week's episode. And the first movie we're going to tackle is Elvis. So Elvis was directed by Baz Luhrmann and is nominated for Best Picture, Best Lead Actor for Austin Butler, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Production Design, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, and Best Sound. So, what are my thoughts on the movie? It's very difficult for me to describe what I'm thinking, and you can already probably hear that I'm not particularly amazed and hyped about it, but I don't even know why, because this movie was basically made for me. I usually really enjoy musical biopics, and this is also why I had really high expectations for this movie. Actually, funny story, I was going to see that movie with a friend of mine in the summer. We were going to go to an open air movie theater, and we wanted to watch the movie and have a great time, but then we didn't go because it was going to rain, and it did rain, so it was wise not to go, It would have been a miserable night. And then for that movie, in hindsight, I can say, thank God we didn't. But I promised my grandma to watch it with her because she's a huge Elvis fan and loves his music and still listens to his music. So that was kind of cute. And then we watched it together. And I really liked that I could talk to someone about the movie because usually I watch those movies on my own and I don't really share anything. Maybe friends have seen those movies and then we can have a little bit of a discussion. But most of the time, I'm the first one to watch these movies. So yeah, it was just nice to talk to someone. And we were sitting at the breakfast table and discussing vibrantly what our thoughts were. And it was very nice because basically we agreed on most things. So the first thing I'm going to say about this movie, and it's going to be one thing I've said about most movies that I've seen for this year's Oscars, the movie was way too long. And it was also way too long in a bad way. Some movies are endless. Some movies just take forever to finish. But while you enjoy them, it's much easier to just accept that, But when a movie is just mediocre and it just drags on, which this one did, it's just unbearable. And yeah, that was my first thought I had. And I do remember, maybe around like the middle of the movie, I basically had a hard time not to fall asleep. And when does this ever happen? It shouldn't. And it doesn't usually. When a movie is really boring and I can stream it at home and I can watch it from the comfort of my home, I usually pick up my phone and I just scroll through Instagram or check my new messages or emails. No, I decided to just take a quick nap, and that was very alarming for me. But I have to say, apart from all that, Austin Butler did a great job. I think, you can be a fan of his or not. I don't think I am really, but I think his performance has to be rewarded, and it has been. I know he's been getting all the awards and all the fame that he deserves for this role because, of course, he gave it his all. And you can tell it's such a good performance and such a great thing for him in his career at the moment. I think, yeah, he definitely showed that he is a very talented young actor, and I think that he rightfully deserves his Oscar nomination. So I have to say that. But what I really didn't like about the movie, and I'm really not saying this lightly, was the makeup and hairstyling. I have so many questions. First of all, why did they put so much makeup on Austin Butler? I don't think it was necessary. I think, of course, you want to, get the facial features in the right direction so he looks Elvis-like, or as best as he can possibly look to someone who looks like Elvis. But he already looks somewhat like Elvis. So why was there so much eyeliner involved, which did not help his look like Elvis situation in the least? Like, that was just makeup. So I didn't really get that. And then also for Tom Hanks's role, the Colonel, honestly, no. I think it was one of the, well, I don't want to say one of the worst creations I've ever seen. Why? What happened? Tell me what happened. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was believable. It was basically Tom Hanks in a fat suit and prosthetics to make him look bigger than he actually is. And I didn't like that at all. I didn't appreciate it at all. And then when you have Brendan Fraser in The Whale in something similar, which just looks so much more believable, I mean, excuse me, no, it won't do. And especially not for an Oscar nomination. I don't get that at all, actually. But don't forget, this is my opinion. Maybe it's just me. Maybe other people liked it. But yeah, that was something that really actually bothered me. And I also couldn't look away. And while we're on the topic of Tom Hanks, Tom Hanks is a treasure. He's one of the best actors out there. He's one of the greatest. He is one of the most amazing actors I've ever seen on screen, and also one of the nicest people. But I really didn't like him in that role. Honestly, I really didn't like the character, but I can differentiate between character and actor. I mean, an actor is just given a role and then they do their best. And if you don't like the character, the actor has actually done something amazing because you don't like this person. But I didn't like the performance, to be honest. I didn't like the character. I just thought it was an interesting thing, an interesting thought to tell the story from his perspective. It was actually quite nice and quite smart, but it just didn't really do it for me. I don't know. Every time he was on screen, I was not a fan. I can't really find the words, as you can probably tell, but I just didn't like it. I just didn't like the whole thing. And I was actually sad to realize it's Tom Hanks. I was like, no, I love him. Why? No. Yeah, that was really sad, actually. It just felt like a caricature of a person. And I think this is probably what I didn't like. And when we go back to Austin Butler, the contrast was just too big for me. He was very good on the one hand and basically outshone everyone else. But even when that happens in a movie, and it happens a lot, you can just get away with it. And you don't necessarily think the other actors didn't do a good job or you didn't like them that much. Yeah, maybe they weren't as great, but you can still somewhat enjoy their performances and like their performances and appreciate it. But I think it was basically the Austin Butler show in this movie. And it was fine, but it was just very surprising when you have people like Tom Hanks in a movie. And, when it comes to the singing, I know they didn't use a lot of Austin Butler's voice. They used some things, and I think that was very good. I think it's very hard when you think about the fact that Elvis, through drug use and other things, probably had a change in his voice at a very early age. So I think it's very hard for any actor to make up a voice that sounds similar, but I think when they used him, you could usually tell. And I really like that. I really like that they used the same technique that they used in Bohemian Rhapsody, where they mixed Freddie Mercury's voice with Rami Malek and another singer, and then came up with that voice. So I think that was very nice. And while we're on the topic of singing, I would have wished for more full songs. Honestly, I think Elvis's music is still pretty great, and his songs are very, very famous for a good reason. And I know it's very difficult, and I've just criticized that the movie was already too long. Why am I saying more full songs? But you can use these songs in the background. You can just put them in, squeeze them in. And I think, of course that's fan service, but this is why the movie exists in the first place, right? Moving on, let's talk about costume design and set design. I think these two were amazing. I really have nothing to comment on. I think it's a well-deserved nomination, and I really enjoyed looking at all these beautiful sets and costumes, especially, the very famous Elvis costumes. It was just great to look at. But when we talk about looking at things, the visuals in the movie, oh my God, at times for me, they were really confusing, many frames in one, and it was just sometimes a very wild ride. I know this is kind of like the typical Baz Luhrmann, it's a maximalist entertainment category when you watch his movies, but I don't know, maybe it's not for everyone, and I am everyone in this case, but sometimes I thought it was overwhelming, and it was just a little bit too much. And because I said the movie is too long for me, what I actually mean by that, it wasn't well balanced. And I think this is key when it comes to a biopic, because you have to leave things out. Of course you have to. You can never squeeze, even if it's a short life, an entire life of a single person into a movie or of a band or, I don't know, a group of people. It just won't work. But I think sometimes the movie dragged on when it was really not important at all. And very interesting parts about Elvis's life were left out, and it just didn't work for me. So I would have wanted more focus on the interesting parts, and even if you have to go there, make it a darker movie if it has to be. And I think sometimes it has to be. I know a lot of producers and directors shy away from showing the very horrible sides of someone's life, but Elvis's life had a lot of ups and downs, and it looked very Hollywood-ish for me, like concealing the darker things and the darker themes of a person's life. But if you want to do a biopic, then go all the way. Don't stop in the middle and go like, okay, no, that's just a bit too much for my movie. No, I mean, if you choose that character and that person, just go for it. And I know it never happens. I haven't seen one biopic which was kind of like true to the person within the last couple of years, but I'm still crossing my fingers that one day there will be the one good example. And I know it's difficult. I know it's very hard to go there, but I think for Elvis's life, it would have been a little better than what we got in the end. And then there's just one more thing that I didn't like about the movie, and that is that they put modern music in it. I mean, you're making a movie about a musician, and I've just criticized that I think there could have been more full Elvis songs. So why do you steal the precious time that you have and just put modern music in it? I mean, I know sometimes it was to show that, we still listen to versions of Elvis's songs and he's still relevant, but he is still relevant. We all know that. This is why you're making the movie about him, right? So yeah, no, it was completely, I don't know, misplaced for me. I really didn't like it. I felt a little odd. And that was also why, for example, Elvis was walking somewhere. So you were just looking at him. And then there was this modern version of Hound Dog. I mean, no, I didn't like it. I mean, maybe other people did. I really didn't. And I thought that kind of destroyed the moment for me, to be honest. So yeah, what are my final thoughts on Elvis? I think it was an okay movie. It was a fine movie. Again, I would not have enjoyed sitting in the rain watching this movie, which probably tells you about how much I actually value this movie. I've seen it once. I'm probably never going to watch it again. And that's okay. Not every movie has to be rewatched, for sure. But yeah, I don't know. It was fine. If you love Austin Butler, probably this is going to be the movie for you because his performance is outstanding. But other than that, there was not much that captivated me and not much that I loved about the movie. And, Baz Luhrmann, I used to really like him. I'm one of those Moulin Rouge people. I really enjoyed that when it came out years ago. But since then, I don't know. There could have been better stuff, I think. So, yeah, these are my thoughts on Elvis. Right, now on to movie number 2. Movie number 2 on my list is Triangle of Sadness, and that was directed by Ruben Östlund and is nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay. And I'd previously seen a movie by Östlund which is called Force Majeure. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Actually, this is the English title. I think the Swedish title is something like Tourist, but just pronounced in a Swedish way, and I'm not even going to attempt to do that, but it was actually really good. I discovered it on Instagram. I saw a snippet from the movie, a very interesting scene, and I was like, I have to see that movie. And unfortunately, it was a really good, strong start, but then the rest of the movie somewhat faded away. And I was very hesitant when I started Triangle of Sadness to see if it was going to happen again. And spoiler alert, it kind of did. Oh my God, Triangle of Sadness, another super strong start. I think for 2/3 of the movie, I was convinced this was going to be my favorite pick from this year's Oscars. I was sure I'm going to love the movie till the end. But for all of the people who've seen that movie, and of course I'm throwing in all the spoilers at this point, beware. When they start vomiting, it just goes downhill from there. Honestly, that was literally the scene where it got a little weird. I mean, maybe not immediately, but when they're attacked and then they get stranded on that island, this is when it kind of gets weird, and it just doesn't keep up with the other 2/3 of the movie. So I really enjoyed it. As I said, the beginning of the movie was very interesting and very strong and very, it was a satire. It was ironic moments, which you can definitely relate to. It was about influencing, it was about modeling, about snarky comments, about modern relationships, feminism, a lot of different things compiled in small scenes, but it worked perfectly. It was beautifully done. It was extremely well acted. It was very, very good. But then, while the story continues and you start to understand the characters and you kind of like grow with them and you relate to them and you can understand why they do certain things, and then other characters come in, you think, oh my God, I know where this movie is going to end, but you don't. There is going to be like the big surprise at the end. Maybe not because I've spoiled it already, but I don't know. For me, I think the break was just too harsh. But let's start with what I really liked about the movie. So, of course, there was this really obvious social commentary, but it worked really well. It was commentary on money, influencing, and all of these other things, Again, it was really well acted, and what I really especially enjoyed were these moments of cringe. So in the first part, for example, the incident of who pays for dinner. In the second part, for example, the whole thing with the water slide. Oh my God, it was so cringy. It felt horrible watching it. Or, the hand grenade couple. I mean, come on. It was so strange. But again, the commentary was great. Then there were the communism and anti-communist jokes. Then there was, the change of power. These moments worked really well for me, to be honest. And, while you think about the movie, at the end of the day, you realize this is a really sharp satire. I mean, there is dark humor, it's wicked, it's grotesque at certain points. It's a lot to take in, but it works for like 2/3 of the movie. But then again, it just gets too long. I think it would have worked better if it were a little shorter, to be honest. But I did like the very blunt and obvious parts, the everyday behavior, the everyday comments that you make. It was just served on silver platters, and it was a very thoughtful movie watching experience. While you watch that movie, you think about your own behavior and other people's behavior, and you kind of reflect Like, what am I doing with my life? Am I acting like that? Is that a discussion I've had before? All of those things. So I think when we talk about the nomination for Best Original Screenplay, I mean, yeah, definitely. I think the chances are really good, as in the material is just very good. But the way the movie then ended, and let's not forget, it is a somewhat open ending, it just didn't really do it for me. It was not as captivating as the rest of the movie. Again, I talked about like the change of power, which I really enjoyed, but certain things just felt like they didn't really fit and they didn't really belong. And I felt like that throughout the last part of the movie. So I don't know, it just didn't feel like that was the same quality as the rest of the movie was for me. But again, everyone has to make up their own mind. Maybe you disagree, maybe you loved the ending. I mean, a lot of people liked it. I've read a lot of comments and a lot of articles about it, and I think a lot of people actually enjoyed the end. But it will always be a matter of personal taste and preference and opinion. But I would definitely recommend watching it, because the 2/3 of the movie in the beginning that I watched and that I loved, I have to say, it was definitely unusual movie making. Or maybe it wasn't, because I think that's kind of like how Scandinavian movie making works. It was probably the least American movie I've seen in a while. And I did really like that. So, yeah, just watch it and I hope you enjoy. And I'm very intrigued to hear your thoughts on it in the comments. Movie number 3, The Banshees of Inisherin, directed by Martin McDonagh, nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Lead Actor for Colin Farrell, Best Supporting Actor for Brendan Gleeson, Best Supporting Actress for Kerry Condon, and Best Original Screenplay, Best Film Editing, and Best Original Score. So the Banshees, I mean, they captured my heart. Oh my God. It was just a very wild ride. I mean, I think these are the first words that come to mind. I have never seen a movie like that. I didn't expect to see a movie like that. I was shocked. I was sometimes really disgusted. But oh my God, Colin Farrell, you broke my heart. I mean, in a good way. I think the acting in this movie was spectacular, and I really do hope that they win their Oscars. And I know I'm saying this after saying I want the guys from Everything Everywhere All at Once to win, but it's so hard. I think the acting categories this year, they're hard. I mean, I don't know. I mean, thank God I don't have to make this decision, but Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell, oh my God. I mean, they're not only a team in real life, but in that movie, they were just amazing and mind-blowingly amazing. So let's start with my thoughts on the movie. Yeah, I was surprised about the story, even though I kind of knew where it was going and I kind of knew what was going to happen. I mean, when I watched the trailer and Brandon Gleeson's character Colin just says, "I'm going to chop off my fingers when you talk to me," I was like, yeah, sure, he's going to do that. But when he does it, oh my God, I couldn't really take it. I mean, I have a weak stomach and it showed. But like, honestly, I was just super surprised that they actually went with that. But that is kind of what made the movie so wow and like so mind-blowing, I think. And it was so emotional. I think, what makes me the most emotional in movies is like animals dying and lonely people who have no one to talk to, people who just want to make friends. That is what's killing me. So Colin Farrell's character just killed me from beginning to end. He was so sweet and such a simple man, but it broke my heart what happened to him. And then there was an animal dying. I mean, I was just crying for the entire movie. It was not okay. It made me so emotional. But, thank God the movie was sometimes actually really funny and there were quite like hilarious moments. It was definitely dark humor sometimes, but like in a good way. So my favorite quote from the movie was definitely, "I'm not putting the donkey outside when I'm sad." And I just felt that. I was like, yeah, I love that donkey too, which, made the rest of the movie much harder to endure. But again, it was actually, it was such a wild ride. It was really cool, apart from, like being shocked that someone would actually chop off their finger. But yeah, it made me a very squeamish person for a second, but I got over it because, again, the acting was just incredible, like incredible. Everyone who's nominated is rightfully nominated, but especially Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson. They stole my heart. It was beautifully acted. And I was actually very impressed, by the movie. I think, when I watched the movie, I totally ignored my thoughts on Triangle of Sadness. And I was like, yeah, so far, this is going to be the best movie I've seen for this year's Oscars. And I have to say, it's still holding up. Little spoiler alert. There's one movie that might have taken its spot. I can't really decide right now, but I will talk about that other movie later. But yeah, this movie was just such a great experience. And also, the setting, come on, the landscape, the nature, it was just so beautiful to look at. And I love that they just used it. They used it for the movie. You just fell in love with Ireland. And I know Inisherin doesn't really exist, and in several interviews they talk about where they actually shot the movie, but like now I just want to travel there and explore Ireland. It was just great. I'm definitely going to steal something else from Triangle of Sadness, and that is the Best Original Screenplay Award. I really want the Banshees to win it because this story was even more extraordinary, and I think it would be a very well-deserved win. And maybe to come full circle and to explain why I find this movie so interesting and why it had such a big impact on me. The empathy, the giant empathy you have for Colin Farrell's character, it just breaks your heart. It is so intense. You keep wondering, why is Colm just torturing him for no reason? You can't get an answer, and it's just torture for the audience. And Colin Farrell's honest portrayal of this nice and sweet and simple man, it doesn't matter that he isn't the smartest person, but he is so kind and so nice, and you just have so many feelings. And I think when a movie can get that reaction from its audience, this is what a movie actually, should be doing every single time. And rarely and barely movies manage to do that. So what I'm trying to say is that the Banshees of Inisherin captured my heart, and it had an impact on me that not a lot of movies managed to have on me for a long time. And I really hope that a lot of people go to the movie theaters and they watch the movie and they feel what I felt while watching it, because I want this movie to get all the awards. I really don't, because the decisions are so hard this year. No, but I think it was definitely due to the acting of Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell, but also to the writing. The writing of this movie is spectacular, and I think actually it does beat any other movie. So I'm very excited to see how it's going to do on March 12th, so we'll see. But yeah, I'm really crossing my fingers really extra hard. And do you know what's going to be breaking my heart and your hearts probably as well? Movie number 4, which is Tar, is probably my favorite movie from this year's Oscars. And I know I just raved about Banshees of Inisherin, but Tar is my movie, and I want to explain why. So just like it happened to me with Triangle of Sadness, the first snippet and the first scene from this movie I actually saw on Instagram Reels. Is this how you find movies these days? Come on. But anyway, I am a huge fan of Cate Blanchett's, so I was actually very, very excited for this movie. But when I realized that this movie was going to be about conducting an orchestra, I was in. Hands down, I was like, this is going to be my movie. And it really was. I believe that most people who watch that movie will find it very boring, especially the first part of the movie. I think, like Triangle of Sadness, which, there are a lot of similarities, I'm just realizing that, is kind of divided into at least 2 parts. So there is the musical part, and then there is the abuse of power part of the movie. And I think the musical part it could have been like 3 hours long for me. This is one of the movies I did not want to end. It could have been 4 hours long. I would not have criticized it because what I was watching was so entertaining and so exciting for me to watch. I just didn't want it to stop. And this movie was never boring for me. There was not one scene I thought, oh my God, I would love to pick up my phone right now, but I'm not allowed to. So what am I going to do? No, I was captivated from beginning to end. But let's start with the basics. So Tar is directed by Todd Field, and it's nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Lead Actress for Cate Blanchett, Best Original Screenplay, Best Cinematography, and Best Film Editing. And again, it was the movie I was probably most excited for because I had seen that snippet on Instagram and I wanted to see it so badly. And it was really hard, first of all, to find a screening. I mean, in my city, and I'm not even living in a small city, there is just no screening. I had to go somewhere else. So that was just sad. But other than that, I managed to find it, and I was very excited about that. So when I then finally watched it, I immediately fell in love again with Cate Blanchett's acting. Her performance in this role was just spectacular and on another level for me. And honestly, now I can't decide anymore who should get the Best Lead Actress Oscar, because do I want Cate Blanchett to win or do I want Michelle Yeoh to win? You know, after giving it some thought, I think I would probably end up with Cate Blanchett because it was just so good. But it kind of breaks my heart, but also it kind of would break my heart even more if Cate didn't win. So I think I'm going to go for Cate or go with Cate, but oh, this is so hard. Why is this so hard this year? Honestly, it's not okay. But like, do you realize that this is actually the best possible outcome when it's so hard that you can't decide and the performances were so captivating and so great that you can't possibly make a decision, and then you're like, oh my God, thank God I don't have to. But I hope I will not be devastated at the end of the night. But let's continue with my thoughts on the movie. So as I said, I kind of felt like the movie was divided into two parts. There was the musical part, and then there was the character study and the whole thing with the abuse of power. And I liked both parts, but I definitely enjoyed the musical part more. So what I really liked was the focus on the craft of conducting, you know, the various scenes of seeing her study the music and just being part of the music, being absorbed by the music and also by her job. And then conducting the orchestra, it was just amazing. I could have watched her conducting the orchestra, her studying the music and going over it again and again for hours on end. It was just captivating, interesting, but I'm a musical nerd, so I kind of, you know, I've seen that before, and I've seen women conductors work before, and it is so interesting and captivating to see the differences between male and female conductors, and also the different characters of conductors. So some people are very passionate, and they have like big expressions, and others are very small, but just as powerful. So all of that was so interesting for me to watch. Again, I could have watched this for hours. And what I really liked about Cate's performance were the small and big gestures and moments of movement, how she moved her body, how she walked, how she conducted the orchestra. All of these things were super interesting to look at, and you were just drawn in by her performance. And somehow she was still always a very composed character. And that was so interesting for me because when she interacted with the orchestra and with the music, she opened herself up and she grew and she was very fierce and powerful. And she did not let go of that fierceness in her private life and the character's private life, but everything got a little bit more distant and a little bit more composed. And that was very interesting for me to watch. And I also read somewhere that the character of Lydia Tarr is missing a beating heart, and this is also the way that Cate Blanchett portrayed it. But I can't really agree. I think there were two really important relationships that she had in the movie, and the first one was her relationship to music. Again, she was most vibrant and most passionate in her relationship to music when she was conducting, even when she was just studying the music at a table in a restaurant. But then also there was the relationship she had to her daughter. And I don't think that it was a very distant relationship. I think it was a loving relationship. And there was definitely a beating heart in that character. And although she did terrible things and horrible things, there was a person behind that. And you know what I thought was so mesmerizing? Sometimes I forgot that Lydia Tarr is not a real person. Sometimes I forgot that I was not watching a biopic. I was watching a fictional movie. And I completely forgot that. So the character study of a person like that, and just to put it on screen in that way, it was just extremely, extremely captivating. And you know, for example, Colin Farrell's character in the Banshees of Inisherin was equally powerful and also a fictional character. So it's manageable, like it's achievable. You can create these kinds of characters. So to all the directors and writers out there, please, more of that. I mean, this is why I watch so many movies, because I want to experience following characters like that and being part of those lives. Because even if it's just for like 2 hours, because that's like the average length of a movie, I mean, these 2 hours are so interesting and usually such a wild ride that it is just so enjoyable. And the movie watching experience is so unique, even if you don't get to follow such a nice character like Colin Farrell's in the Banshees, but you instead follow someone like Lydia Tarr. And I did really like the ending of the movie, especially the final scene, because I really didn't see it coming. You know, after the abuse of power, there were really no consequences that she faced, and she should have faced so much more. But it was definitely somewhat normal that you see someone abusing other people and abusing power and just going right back to where they were and to who they were without facing anything really. And although it didn't really, go far enough, there should have been more. The final scene was like, punching her in the gut. And she definitely deserved that. So that was definitely something that I didn't see coming. That was such a surprise for me. And I really liked that ending. And to summarize why I love that movie so much, of course, I think it was captivating because I'm a musical nerd, and the whole making music, watching people make music captivated me. But I also like that the focal point of that movie was a woman. I think a few years back, we would have seen the same movie with a man as the protagonist. And I think choosing a woman made it even creepier to watch her freak out, to watch that genius at work, to watch her abuse power, to watch her raise a child, to see her in various kinds of relationships, and I include her relationship to music in that. So I think that movie captivated me because it showed me parts of a former life and parts of something that I used to enjoy so much, and then it just added a very interesting character study on top, which was kind of even like a thriller or like a dramatic movie that I didn't see coming within the movie. So I recommend Tar to anyone who's interested. If you like music, that's just an added bonus, but go watch it because it is one of the most captivating movies I've ever seen. And I have to say, this is my favorite from this year's Oscars. And now let's talk about the final movie. Movie number 5 on my list is, of course, The Whale. So The Whale is directed by Darren Aronofsky, nominated for Best Lead Actor for Brendan Fraser, and then again for Best Supporting Actress for Hong Chow, and Makeup and Hair. And of course, I've mentioned Makeup and Hair when we talked about Elvis, and I used The Whale as a comparison, and I just want to stress that Makeup and Hair was amazing. I didn't see it coming that Brendan Fraser could ever look like that. I was shocked, and for a moment I was like, did he actually gain the weight? Because I've seen Christian Bale do really creepy stuff with his body, and other people as well, so I was like, is that an option? But I mean, what I'm trying to say is Makeup and Hair was so good that I questioned if I was watching something that was reality or not. And because it wasn't, it just showed the skill. So if they win, I mean, it is so well deserved. So apart from Makeup and Hair, I think the most exciting parts of the movie were the people, so the actors. I think the performances by Brendan Fraser and by Hong Chow and also by Sadie Sink were really, really good. And I think they are rightfully nominated. And I'm very excited to see who's going to win. I mean, I actually want Colin Firth to win a little more than Brendan Fraser, but I know it's his like redemption role, his redemption part. So we'll see how that goes, but it would be rightfully and well deserved. But I think, again, Hong Chow, I've seen her in The Menu. I mean, she is a strong performer. I'm very excited to see how that's going to turn out for her. I mean, like probably everyone else, I cried like a baby at the end. It was very emotional to watch Brendan Fraser die. I mean, it was very moving. The entire experience, the entire movie watching experience was very emotional and very moving. But I think the final scene with him and Sadie Sink was just overwhelmingly emotional. And it did overwhelm me. So I didn't mind, I'm just like, okay, when it comes out, then it comes out. So I'm just going to cry if I want to. But yeah, second movie in a row. And because I'd never seen the play before, I kind of expected a happy end. And when that didn't happen, I was actually devastated. I thought that his daughter and his friend, they would convince him to go to the hospital and get help. But when they didn't manage, it was horrifying. It was horrible. It was, again, devastating and so sad to watch. But also, you kind of accepted his defeat, You kind of accepted that he had given up on himself a long time ago. And because the movie is originally a play, there was like a very tiny universe where everything happened. And that made it feel like it was actually a play and like it would work on stage, which it obviously does. But it also made it feel very intimate and also a little bit lonely. And I think that was also something that I liked about the movie, that it made me feel things and it made me understand the character and see his loneliness and see his devastation, and that he had indeed given up on himself. And while others still tried to convince him to seek help, he was just done. And that final feeling of this is going to be the end and we just have to respect it and accept it, it was very emotional and very raw and also very human. And that made the movie special, I think, for me. And there are so many different themes in the movie, like pity and shame and grief and loss and, of course, obesity. And there are dark moments and lonely moments and raw, human, emotional moments. At the end of the day, this is a movie about love and the destructive kind and the beautiful kind. And I did like that resolution. It felt very honest to me. So I know a lot of people have criticized the movie, but appreciated and celebrated Brendan Fraser's performance. And I do understand the criticism. I also agree that the movie was definitely something that works better as a play. But the performance that Fraser and also Hong Chow gave us, and also Sadie Sink, I don't want to ignore her, it was very strong. And this is how the movie worked for me, through the performances and through the acting. And sometimes that's enough, Sometimes that is what saves something that is maybe better on stage or better on screen, depends on, where it's put. But I think the acting really saved this movie for me, and this is how I enjoyed it and why it made me so vulnerable and emotional at the end. So I do recommend it very much. I think it's one of the best movies from 2022 for sure. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm very intrigued to hear your thoughts on it. So this kind of sums up my Oscar review for 2023. And I think, when we look at the big categories, for example, Best Picture, I do have some thoughts. I think when it comes to Best Picture, The Banshees of Inisherin, I would love that movie to win. I would love Everything Everywhere All at Once to win, or Tar, because, I'm in love with that movie. I think The Triangle of Sadness doesn't really quite get there, just like Top Gun, just like The Fabelmans, just like Elvis. And when we look at the acting categories, for example, Best Lead Actor, I think when you compare Austin Butler and Colin Farrell and Brendan Fraser, it's very tough, but I think for me, it should be Colin Farrell. I don't think when it comes to Austin Butler and Colin Farrell that Austin Butler's performance was as strong as Colin Farrell's, but again, that is a personal opinion. And when we look at the lead actresses, I did really like Andrea Riseborough in To Leslie, but I think Kate Blanchett is the best for me. I also really liked Ana de Armas in Blonde. I know that a lot of people hated the movie, and I also didn't like it, but her performance was still very strong, so it would also be rightfully deserved. But when I think about Kate Blanchett in Tar or Michelle Yeoh in Everything Everywhere All at Once, these performances just stand out. But the good thing is, we don't have to make any decisions. We just have to wait and see. And I think that is very liberating and very enjoyable. So I can't wait to watch the Oscars 2023. I'm very excited to see who's going to go home at night with the trophy in hand. And I hope you enjoy watching the show. And I hope you enjoyed my little review sessions 1 and 2. And I will talk to you next week. Bye!